Today we're going to set up a quad from scratch. Basically a fresh build, and we're going to set it up in Betaflight and get it ready to fly. Okay guys, I am busy editing this video and I need to make this interjection before we continue because I noticed a couple things. This is very unpolished, but I need to get this done. During the video, I have a problem with motor 2 that it won't spin. At the time I was super puzzled. I didn't know what it was. Now I know that there was a problem with the coding for the target for the Paradrone F4, specifically for Betaflight 3.2.4 and 3.2.5. When I flashed it over to 3.3, the problem went away. There was definitely a problem in that target specifically. Now that brings me back to the next thing. I am doing this video in 3.2. 3.3 release candidates were already out. 2 days ago, the official version of 3.3 came out. But you can still use this video a lot, and most of the information in it is very much relevant to 2.3 as well. To Betaflight 3.3. A lot of the things are the same. Yes, there are some features and a couple of things that are different in 3.3, but for the most part, there's nothing revolutionary changing in 3.3. So the information in this video of how to set it up is very much relevant, so feel free to use it. Eventually, when things change some more, and I've changed a lot of the way I do things, then I will do another update video. By then, it might be the end of 3.3, and we might be going into 3.4 by then. Let me explain what we're going to do here. This X-Labs BRAP is a quad I got flying already, but I didn't like how it was flying with the previous flight controller. So I just switched it over to another flight controller, and it hasn't been set up. I know the build is okay. All the connections from today are new, so I have to be careful. But I'm just going to set it up from scratch. What we're going to do is we're going to go through how I do it. Some people do it differently. There's a couple of things that I prefer to do a certain way, and yeah, there's a couple of ways to skin the cat, you know, and do this. But the process is very similar, and if you follow these steps, at least how I do it, you should be okay. So what we're going to do first, the very first thing I want to do is make sure that all my connections are fine. I use a smoke stopper to make sure that I don't short, if something's shorted, and I've shorted stuff before, that it doesn't burn. This bulb here is 12 volts. You can find how to make this online. You probably know what it is already, but if you don't, just search for smoke stopper on RC groups and you can learn how to make this. But what it does is if there's a short, all the excess power goes through the bulb and it doesn't burn your components. However, this is 12 volts, so if I use a 4S, I'll burn the bulb. So we're going to use a 3S just for this step. So that's good. If the light were on, it means I have a short somewhere. But it's fine and initiated, it's all good. So now that we know that, we can get rid of this because we are not going to need it anymore. Now that we know the build is good. So the BRAP has a problem with the USB connector that you can't plug this in correctly, but the flight controller I stuck in there actually has the USB offset a little bit to the back, so there you go, you can just plug it in. Beautiful. Now, there's a couple of steps we have to go through here. We have to set up the flight controller, we have to check and set up the ESC, you have to make sure the motors are spinning in the right direction, and one thing you want to do is before you actually start setting anything up, you want to make sure you're in the latest firmware, or at least the firmware that you want to be flying. Because otherwise, if you forget that step, you'll set it all up and then go like, oh crap, there's newer firmware, and you gotta start over, or almost over. We're also gonna make sure it works well with the radio. We're going to look at video to make sure that's set up well, and we're going to check motor direction, and we're going to check failsafe before we even consider flying. For this video, I have already a model set. I don't usually start a model from scratch, just simply because I've been doing this for a while, but even still, OpenTX is like, oh my gosh, I gotta set up a whole model. So I usually just copy model. I don't bind all my models to the same model. Sometimes I do with certain models, but for the most part I have a model per model. So this one has a fresh model that I copied from another one. That this is going to be TBS Crossfire. So we're gonna run through this, and the model is set up to work with that. I don't want to be transmitting 100 milliwatts during the setup, so I'm going to change the Crossfire to output only 25 milliwatts. That way it's not pumping out 100 milliwatts here at the bench for no good reason. Since I'm not going to go through the process of how to set up the radio, you're going to have to look elsewhere for that. So this whole setup is assuming you have the model correctly set up in your radio. Yeah, we're going to set up the modes for arming and air mode and turtle mode and all that kind of stuff. And we are going to interact with the radio in the setup, but we're not going to set a model from scratch. So for that, you're going to have to watch another video. And for now, we are going to turn off the radio. I'm not going to need it just yet. And we're going to, first of all, look at what I'm going to do here at the computer. So I actually save all my models, and each one gets a folder with the version of Betaflight or KISS that I'm running. And there I can save, for example, let's look at this guy. I have various versions of KISS, and there I have all my settings for that version. That way you can easily reference old settings, you can reference old rates, you can reference PIDs and things like that. But we're gonna go and we're gonna look at the BRAP, which I already have a model for because I already have this thing flying with a different flight controller. And here we go. So I had Betaflight version 3.2.4, and I know that the last version before 3.3 is 3.2.5. I'm not gonna run 3.3 because I want to run something that's already been proven on this guy. Maybe later when I get a flying good, I'll switch over to 3.3. But in the meantime, let's go and set this up. So come around this way. What we're gonna do is we're going to open up. So I know I have these settings that worked on that quad. So I'm going to copy a lot of these because a lot of them are gonna be the same. These are my previous settings for this quad, and a lot of these settings come from other quads. So I can easily copy things that I know work throughout different quads and then adjust the things that I need for this specific one. It makes it a whole lot easier. I don't do the backups. I don't do the pasting in the CLI because I simply don't do it like that. I go through the front end, and when I need to change something in the CLI, I do it. But I don't have sections that I just copy in, simply because I never felt comfortable with it. I don't want to make any mistakes. It takes longer to do it this way, but yeah, I just feel better about it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to launch Betaflight, which I am on the latest standalone version. And I'm going to flash the flight controller with the latest version. So let's plug this guy in. And we're going to... One thing I like to do is I like to have the USB connected to the board first and then connected to the computer. I just feel it's the best way to do it, and not having connected here and then trying to plug it over there. I just feel I'm going to mess something up if I do it that way. But so I'm looking at the version here. It's 3.2.4 for the Pyro. This is a Pyro drone F4 flight controller, the new one. So it's 3.2.4. I'm quickly going to just look at the settings. That's not set up, so that's all good. Because some of these boards have very specific settings to them. So I kind of like, you can take screenshots if you're not sure, but I kind of like can look at it and tell if there's anything really specific to that board. And it's usually in the configuration. And no, everything else is normal. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect and we're going to flash it. So from our flasher, we're going to find the correct board, which is the Pyro, where it is, Pyro Drone F4, and 3.2.5, full chip erase. Some people don't erase the whole thing. I just like to erase the whole thing and start from scratch every time, because I don't want to carry anything over that might not be compatible and have problems that cost me a lot of time later. Okay, that's all good and well. I have the right flight controller. Make sure you have the right target because you can screw things up if you don't. And most flight controllers will easily just get into DFU mode or bootloader mode when you click flash. Some of them need to hold the button down, but you see this one's DFU, so you're good. It's erasing, and it'll write the new firmware in a second. Okay, so that's good. And then some of you can just connect, but honestly I like to power cycle it first. Okay, and now we can connect to the board. So now we're gonna configure it. Okay, now that we have the board flashed, we're actually gonna go and configure it. We're gonna do this in the computer, so we're gonna look at all the steps in the computer, and then we'll go back to the camera and go through more settings outside. Okay, so now we're gonna fully set up the board. I'm gonna go through it, tell you what I'm doing and why, and certain quirks that apply to this quad, for example, or the way I'm gonna fly this one as compared to others. It's gonna change the way I set it up. First of all, on most quads I don't run the accelerometer, but this quad is gonna be part-time long range, and on a long range quad I like to have the accelerometer on just in case I lose video. I can straighten it up in the air and try to get back. So I'm gonna leave it on. This is an F4 board, so I have enough headroom in the CPU to run it. It used to be back when we were running F1s that we had to turn the accelerometer off if we wanted to do anything fast. So we're gonna calibrate the accelerometer. I know the table's level. If not, I'll do this again. But you'll see the quad levels out. Now I'm gonna use my files on this side, my screenshots, to reference any settings that I want to copy over. Although this is a different flight controller, some of the things are going to be different, some of them are going to be the same. Okay, I know for a fact that I set up my serial RX, which is my X-Fire, my Crossfire, on UART 2. That board, the Pyrodrome F4, normally recommends UART 6, but it's in the back of the board and I needed something in the front. I know this one is uninverted, so we're going to do serial. Smart board I'm not using. Smart audio is UART. This text is small. UART 5. So on UART 5, I'm going to have smart audio, which is to control my VTX, and it's going to be TBS smart audio. I don't change the baud rate, it changes automatically. And ESC telemetry I don't have. This is a BLHeli S. I only have current sensor, so I'm not going to do ESC telemetry. I am doing smart audio, which I set up already, but no smart port, no S bus, so and no GPS and all that stuff. So at the moment, I'm only gonna need the serial RX, the Crossfire receiver, and smart audio. I'll figure out if I need anything else later. We're going to save and reboot. There's a chance that this doesn't stick because there's another setting that we have to do. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. Regardless, we might have to go back to it. So take a look. It did stick, so we're good. But we're gonna go to the configuration now. This quad will be spinning the motors out. And the reason is it's a quasi racer. This is gonna be an interesting build. It's gonna be basically a long range racer, if you can call it that. And I'm gonna have the motor spinning outwards because I like to set up my racing quads with the motor spinning out and my freestyle quads with the motor spinning in. Now, I will be running this in D-Shot 600, but I actually like to calibrate my receiver, my ESCs, even though you don't necessarily have to, because supposedly with D-Shot you don't have to, but I found I like to calibrate it first and then switch over to D-Shot. So in the meantime, we're going to run multi-shot. On almost everything, I run 1050 for minimum throttle, 2000 and 1000. So that's all good. I don't do motor stop. I disarm motors at any throttle value. Okay, for the gyro, we're actually gonna run 8.4. This thing can probably run 8.8 just fine, but we're gonna start in 8.4 because we have the accelerometer on, just to be careful. I'm gonna name it with my name, and we keep the accelerometer off. There's no barometer, I think so. Regardless, I'm not gonna use it. And it's a serial RX. And it's going to be Crossfire, so CRSF for the TBS Crossfire. I'm not running an analog RSSI, no 3D mode. This one doesn't get a GPS. And over here, I'm going to go through some of these. I don't use in-flight calibration, no servo tilt, no soft serial, no sonar. telemetry I will use, yes. I thought that you needed to enable telemetry just for smart port with FrSky SBus, but turns out that you also have to set it up for CRSF if you want to use it as well, even though it goes through and in and out instead of just a smart port. It's going to have an LED strip. I don't like to turn this one on right now because I don't want the LED strip lit while I'm on the bench going through the USB, so I leave this to the very end. I do run air mode. I have been too lazy to set up an idle up switch. It'll have an ESC sensor, will it? I think the current is affected by this. I'm not even sure. I'll check later. If I don't get a current reading, I'll set this up. It will have anti-gravity and it will have the dynamic filters, and then I turned off the beeper for USB because I don't want it beeping on the bench. Okay, we save and we come back. Okay, so for the power and battery, onboard ADC and onboard ADC, yes, there is an ESC sensor, but I found that it doesn't work because it still feeds the I don't know, some port on the flight controller. So even though you have an ESC sensor, it won't give you the current if you don't select that one. At least that's what I found. Hopefully I'm not wrong. If it is, go back here. Minimum cell voltage is 3.3. I sometimes just like to go to 3.1 because I don't want it warning me when it sags. I know what my voltage is supposed to be at, and I have a very good idea of how it feels and how much time I can run, and I have a bunch of measurements that I do, so I don't want it warning me. Same thing with this one. I lower that, and this is going to be 4S, but at some point I might run 5S, so I got to change this. Capacity is going to be 1300. Battery. I'm not going to change the scale here because I honestly don't remember, but you have to check to calibrate your ESC sensor. I'm using a Hobbywing ESC 4-in-1, so I need to adjust to whatever the instructions say for this section. I'm not going to do it right now, but remember to check because otherwise your current readings are going to be wrong. We save it. Failsafe. In Failsafe, don't change anything. It used to be you have to adjust this, otherwise it was wrong and you had a flyaway most likely. But all these things kind of self-adjust when you make your modes with your switches. The only thing that I do is this guard time. Basically, there's a two-stage failsafe. It detects a loss in the packets or a loss in connection. Before it triggers stage 2, there is a time limit, and after that time limit, the quad will basically drop, as you can see here. This is 4.1 of a second, so it means it's almost half a second, a little under half a second. I found, especially on a racetrack, that I've hit failsafe, and for a very short amount of time, I don't have control, but I recover. If it's so short as it is half a second, you're just quickly gonna hit the ground. I like to run a second and a half, which is 15. Because in a second and a half, a lot can happen where the places I fly is basically pretty safe. So in a second and a half of it not having control, it's not enough time for me to crash into something. If you fly like really dangerous areas or really crowded areas or something you can hit something dangerous, just don't do this. But I run a second and a half. Sometimes I run a second. So there we go. Save and reboot. We reconnect and we go now to PID tuning. Now, the PIDs I am not going to touch. I'm going to try the default PIDs first and then tune from there. I never run the D as high as it says. I like to start low there and tune up. So it's 30, 35 default. I'm going to go 22, 27. Depending, because this quad I expect it to be pretty clean, but regardless, I don't like to run the D too high. Everything else on this quad can stay like this. I'll tune later. I'll set up my rates. You set up yours the way you do them. I'm gonna do what I expect is gonna be for my quad. I usually do very similar rates, but very small digits sometimes that I change depending on how it feels, so that it all feel relatively the same. There you go. Those are my rates. And I always add a little bit of anti-gravity even starting out because I know it needs it. Most quads need them. I do more, but I want to keep it low so I can augment that later. This bit here, I don't understand why Betaflight has this at default because it's awful. And it takes a while before you actually realize why it flies like crap. It flies really mushy. You can get a bounce back. I don't understand why I set it up like this. This is one big difference, I guess, between Betaflight and Raceflight. Raceflight kind of like has these things like done and dialed in, where Betaflight, you have them, you can make them great, but you gotta set them yourself. So initially, I kind of like to put them close to the middle somewhere, so it's not too sharp or too slack, and then tune from there. That should do it for now. Something is a little bit around here. It really doesn't matter. The point is, I fine tune later, but the defaults are awful. Just know that. And why is this back on 1? Okay, let me save this real quick. TPA should be fine for this quad for now. And in the filter settings, I am going to leave the gyro filters, the notch filters on. You know what? No, I'm not on this quad. I know it's going to fly well, so I'm going to turn off the notch filters. Don't necessarily do this. There's a video out there on how to do this properly. What I would do is change this to PT1 and keep those on. But I know this quad's going to fly clean, so I'm going to just turn them off. That's it for that. My PIDs, I'm going to keep those. My rates are set. And yeah, that's all good. So this basically is all set up. Now we're going to go to the receiver. I already bound the radio to this quad.
Low battery.
So the binding process you'll have to do on your own, but this one's already bound. Now, if you come around this way, you'll see that the quad is freaking out going in circles. And you go like, what's going on? If you run a Spectrum radio, you will notice that the channel mapping is set up for something else. I don't know what uses this, but I started flying Spectrum when I started flying years ago. So I got used to the Spectrum channel map. So even on FR Sky, I set up the Spectrum channel map, which is Thai Air. And now when I save this, you'll notice the quad stops spinning because now it's set up properly. Now, if you have a good radio, like FR Sky, Spectrum, something that has really good endpoints, you can lower this. This is what used to be the min check and max check. Now they call it stick low. I go as low as possible. Well, for me, 1010 could be fine, but for me, 1020 at the bottom, 1980 at the top. I do that for everything. That's how I set them all up. You probably won't notice a difference, but it's good practice to set that up like that. Now, what we want to do is make sure that our channel mapping is correct. So, if we look at here and roll, you'll see that my roll is good. It centers at 1500, and then it does 1000 at the bottom, 2000 at the top. You will have to adjust your sub trims and your endpoints, because by default the endpoints are too high, and you will end up reading here something like 220, 2020, and down here something like 980. So you have to adjust your endpoints on the radio so that you get 1000, 2000, 1999. That's fine, that's close enough for me. So, and your sub trim, so it's centered at 1500. My pitch, same thing, 1000, 2000, centers at 1500. Yaw, same thing. Throttle, 1000, 2000. Okay, and then we have, so that's all good. And then we have my arm switch.
Engine on, engine on, engine off.
My
Snap roll. Snap
turtle mode switch.
Snap roll.
My angle mode switch. And then I have what I use for my beeper.
Seek.
And black box.
Black box recording.
So I know my switches are working properly. Basically, I have aux 1
Engine on.
is my arm switch.
Engine off. Snap roll.
Aux 2 is my beeper and black box.
Recording.
Aux 3 is my turtle mode. And aux 4 is my self-level, my angle mode for a quad like this. And I set all of them up the same way, except the ones that don't have angle mode. That's why I put the last aux 4 on angle mode, because I only use it on the long range quads. So I like to leave it on the last channel so I can easily delete it if I'm not going to use it. Okay. So now this is the inputs the radio is sending the flight controller. Now what we want to do though is we want to make sure those inputs do something in Betaflight. Got it? So I do have an RSSI channel on the Crossfire, and I know it's aux 8. This is specific to Crossfire, so you don't have to worry too much about it if you're running something else. Okay, so for reference, I'm gonna look over here and where I set up my switches. That way I remember, and they are here. See? So now I'm gonna set up my ARM switch on aux 1. And I know I put it here. All this area for me is ARM. Yep. And then I'm gonna do my angle mode, which is on aux 4. And I put it there. I'm gonna show you how this looks in a second. Okay. My beeper, I do it on aux 2. And it beeps from here to there, which means it'll be beeping when I'm doing black box, which is fine. I like it that way. Okay, and then we're gonna do flip over after crash, so flip over after crash, which is turtle mode, won't show in the switches yet because I'm running multi-shot. As soon as I set D-shot and my ESC has D-shot commands, I'll see it here and I can add it. There's one more thing that I have, which is camera control. But I'm using camera control with stick movement. I actually don't even know how it works on this board, so I'm not going to do it. I'll set that up later when the time comes. But I do have black box, and I know black box, I set it up to work way over here somewhere. There. Okay, so I have my 4 aux channels here. ARM, angle, beeper on aux 2, black box on aux 2, and I'm just missing aux 3 for the turtle mode. I'll set that up later. I'll show you how it looks. So now when I arm, look at here.
Engine on. Engine on. Engine
So I have two
on,
3 position switch. So 2 positions up are basically arm. And then
engine
angle
on.
mode. See how the switch goes into the yellow area? Shows me that it's active. The beeper, yellow area. And I'm running actually channel 2 for black box 2, so this one moves as well. I'm going to go to black box.
Black box recording.
This one moves as well, so it beeps as well. And that's basically how you set up your modes. Okay. So now that you have that out of the way, we can turn the radio off. Because I'm not going to do that right now. I don't do adjustments. There's no servos. Motors. We're going to do this in a second. I'm going to check the ESC firmware before I do that. OSD. This is very personal. It comes with everything on. So initially I'm going to turn it off. I run NTSC cameras, so I'm going to run NTSC. I run imperial units, not metric. And I know my battery is at 1300, so I change that. And altitude, I don't have a barometer, but legal is 400, so by custom I just do 400. Okay, when you finish flying and you turn and you disarm, you will get some stats. These are those stats. I don't have a GPS, so you can't really check speed, so I turn it off. I want to see the minimum battery. I want to see the minimum RSSI. Max current, yes. Use Ma as well. Altitude, no, I don't have a barometer. Black box, sure. And battery, yes. Timer 1 and timer 2, I use timer 2. Max distance, there's no GPS, so I turn that off. And black box number, yes. Now over here, you set up whatever you want, really. Very personal preference. I'm not gonna go into setting this up right now because you can really set it up as much however you want. Well, quickly to show you, I normally put my RSSI value here. You know, I do the timer 2, flight time around here somewhere. Then I'll do current draw. I like to put current draw up at the top here. And sorry, I have to check the other camera. So, and I do the craft name, put it over here. And there's a couple other things that I do, but it takes too much time. I don't want to go, well, main battery voltage. It takes a while to find all the ones you want. But this is the basic idea, flight time, and then I use Actually, I put this over here, and the mod run of it. So this is basically how I set it up. On long range quads, I add more things like GPS information and this and that, but for a racer, this is really all I do. Okay, so I had to change cameras because the other one ran out of battery. This one doesn't have autofocus, you gotta focus by hand, so it is what it is. Now that we have this mostly set up, we have to go through a couple more things. We are going to check the ESC, flash the ESC if it's necessary, check the motor direction, calibration. So what we're gonna do is, this is BLHeli, so it works on Mac, yay. So we're gonna go there first. Okay, so we're going to do now BLHeli. It connects in the same way as Betaflight. The only difference is in order to read the ESCs, you actually need power. So we're gonna use our newbie drone battery here, and we're gonna plug it in now that we're connected. But in order to read the setup, you have to power up. Okay, we read setup, and the first thing I'm going to do is check the firmware. So I know I'm running 16.7, so let's do flash all and find out what the latest one is. So the latest one is actually 16.7. I'm on the latest version, so we don't really have to do anything else there, so we cancel that. Good. Now, as you can see, these ESCs are calibrated already. I calibrated a multi-shot, you know, but the way that you normally calibrate. Should I show you that? No. You can find all the videos on how to calibrate ESCs in Betaflight, but basically the way you do it is you turn on the motor test tab, put the throttle full, connect battery, it chimes, you pull the throttle down, chimes again, gives you calibration. People say that with D-Shot you don't need to do it, but I like to calibrate them first before I go and change the ESC to D-Shot. But I know this is all good. My motor direction is correct, so this depends on your setup. But right now, my motor 1 is reversed and motor 4 is reversed. This could be very common on different quads, but it could vary depending on how you set up your ESCs and your wiring and this and that. Normally, if all 4 motors are normal, you're gonna have 2 motors that are spinning in the wrong direction. Normally, you change 2 ESCs unless you've changed the wiring so that your motors aren't reversed. Okay, so honestly, we don't really have to do anything else over here. So we're just gonna disconnect. I didn't like that because it sounded like when the ESC calibrates. So you know what? Let's go through the process of calibration then, because I think because I had the battery connected, it actually went to calibrate. So let's do the motor calibration then. I am on multi-shot and my throttle values are correct. You want this to be correct, otherwise it won't calibrate properly. And yes, this supposedly isn't necessary, but I still do it. We turn on, make sure you don't have any props, you don't want to kill yourself. And then you make it full throttle. Over here, you plug in the battery. Listen. And you pull down. And that's it. Now, sorry for the beeping. It's because I have it set so that it beeps. So it doesn't beep when you have USB connected, but when it has the battery, because the transmitter is off, it beeps. Okay, so we're gonna take a look now on BLHeli. This time I will turn on the radio so that it's not making all kinds of racket. We're gonna connect.
Engine on.
Plug in the battery.
Battery critical. Low battery.
And we're gonna read. And I'm gonna check that my calibration looks good. They all are equal. Sometimes they vary a little bit, but a couple of microseconds is fine, but you want it to be as close as possible. That looks perfect. Okay, so now we are going to disconnect. We don't need BLHeli anymore, and we go back to Betaflight. Now the important bit here is what we want to do is want to test your motor configuration to make sure it's good. And this is something you definitely want to look at. Okay. So we are going to go to the motors tab. Okay. And we are going to plug in a battery. I wonder why it's doing this. Like it's acting like it's calibrating. Well, whatever. If there's a problem, I'll find out. Okay. Motor 1. You arm over here. Take a look. Well, actually, I have this recording. That's fine. And you spin the motor up. See? You can put tapes or whatnot, but honestly, I just touch it. And I can tell it's spinning outwards, how I want it. Out. Away. And then motor 2. Oh, look at that. Motor 2 is not spinning. Maybe that's my problem. Why the motor don't work? Spinning out. And motor 4 is spinning outward. Got it? Now, why motor 2 is not spinning? That might be the whole reason why. So you gotta go through this process because you find things like that. I thought this was perfect and look, that one won't spin. So I'll find out what's going on with that one soon enough. Okay? And right, so now we can unplug the battery and we can actually
Low battery.
go to our configuration and we can change to D-shut now. I like to set up my motor idle percentage at 4. That can vary from quad to quad, but it's something you have to test. Okay. Now that we've done that, apart from checking the problem with the motor that's not spinning, I'm going to go through my settings again. I'm going to turn on my LED because now I'm actually going to use it. And this is an old LED I have on there, so hopefully it's not broken. So let's go and set it up. And I know it's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 LEDs. So I'm going to set the wire audio mode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to set them to function, mode, and orientation. Arm state. I like that. And basically, this arm is green, arm is blue. But I'm actually going to do disarm light blue. No, there. And a different kind of blue for arm. Simply because that's how I want it. And then it changes once that setting stays. I'm going through this kind of fast, but as you can see, the setting is applied from the previous lights. State, boom. That's it. Save. Now, am I gonna get light or not? Depends. Because, yeah. There it is. If I arm, it should change the style of the light.
Engine on. Engine off. Engine on.
See?
Engine on.
Light blue, dark
Engine
blue.
on. Engine off. Engine on. Engine off.
Something's up with this motor. Okay, so that is basically it. This Spyrodrome F4 does not have an onboard chip, so it means you would have to connect a serial connector with something like an SD card to be able to do the black box. So we're not gonna be doing that. So let's go ahead and turn off black box because we ain't gonna use it. And we can go now. Sorry for all the jumping all over the place, but now we can go to our modes and we can turn off black box because we are not gonna use it. But we haven't set up our turtle mode, which turtle mode is going to be set up on aux 3. Yep. There and there. Exactly. We'll test that later. Okay, so now I know I've set up my ports, I've set up my configuration, I'm on D-shot like I want it to be, I have my power and battery set up, my failsafe is good, we'll test it in a second, my PIDs and all this kind of stuff is all set up, my receiver I know works, I tested this already, my modes are working, I can test the last one, which is this guy.
Snap roll. Snap roll.
There it is, that's working. No servos, motors. We'll fix that motor. I find out what's going on with it later. Done. Okay. Save. Now for the last step. Go ahead and go here so you can see. Now, what I do in order to save my settings is I'll go and take screenshots of every screen. Screenshot. So I can have something like I have on the other side over here. Take a screenshot. That's it. Then I'll go and do a dump in the CLI. So I get all my settings. Copy all of them. I'll create a text file. And then I'll save that text file to my models, if I find them. And I'll find the BRAP, which is what I'm working on. And I have Betaflight 3.2.4, but this is going to be Betaflight 3.2.5, which is the version I'm working on, and that's how I'm going to save the information. And I'm going to save a dump BRAP CRSF, you name it however you want, BF 3.2.5, done. And that's that. And then the last thing I'm going to do, you can also save to file. This is new, I hadn't seen that there. And the one thing I want to do is I actually will save a backup just in case. So I do backup and I save it as a JSON file, and it's going to go in the same folder. Save. Finally, I will take the screenshots that I just took and save them in that same folder for reference. So I'll go to my desktop, find all the screenshots that I just shot, which are at the top, the way I have to set up. Boom, and I'll put them in there. Done. Okay. So now that we have all that, we can check the failsafe, and we're ready to go. Done. Alright, so now we're going to check that my settings work. I wish I could show you a very polished video where everything went right, but in this hobby, a lot of times things don't go right. And as you can see, that motor is not working. Not exactly sure what I did wrong, but something, I'm gonna have to fix it later. But just imagine that all the motors are good, and we are going to do some testing. The first thing we're going to do is
Telemetry recovered. Battery critical. Low battery.
okay. We're gonna check that it arms,
Engine on.
throttles up. This is weird. See what's doing? Something.
Engine off.
You don't have to show it.
Engine off.
That's not a good thing. I'm pretty pissed about it.
Engine on.
What
Engine
the hell?
off.
Seriously. Hope it doesn't burn. So I'm not gonna run it too long, but what we are gonna do is check failsafe before you go out. Make sure. I hear you ticking. It's check failsafe,
Engine
and the
on.
way to do that is you turn off the radio. Boom. Are you recording the thing, or are you recording my face?
I'm recording. Okay, dude.
Seriously. This guy is falling asleep. Let's do this again.
Engine off.
Alright, so we're gonna do this again now with the camera pointing in the right direction. So we arm the quad, and we will turn off the radio, like imagine you lost radio link. And it stops. In 1.5 seconds I can set it up to. Now we can turn the radio back on, regains link,
Modalità maestro attiva. Engine off.
and that's it. So I know it's not gonna fly away if I lose connection.
Telemetry
Yeah,
lost.
the only last thing you need to do at this point is check your video, unlock your VTX if you have to. This is a TBS Unified, so you do have to unlock it. So, what you doing? So, check video, check your channels, check the OSD. If you have a camera that comes with OSD from factory, you're gonna have two OSDs. You're gonna have one overlaid on top of the other. The one from the camera, this is a Foxier Predator, so it does have an OSD. So I'm gonna have that with the Betaflight on top. So you want to turn the camera one off. I've done it already, so I'm good. That's not part of the video, but yeah, you do have to do that. And just check that your picture's good. And the first time you go fly, I know some guys go all freaking gung-ho on the first flight. I don't. I like to take it easy, make sure that I don't have any problems. I don't fly too far. I come back, check my motor temperatures. Normally, at this point, you could just fly and expect it to be fine. But I guess it's my days from flying planes where you have to just double check everything. That's the way I do it. And I know there's a lot of missing pieces of information. I kind of went really fast through it, but for the most part, that covers just about everything. And apart from a little problem with my motor here, yeah, you're pretty much ready to go fly.